Hello and welcome to ONTV's Fantasy Football League. I am the commish, Joe Johnson, and also the owner of Team Hollywood Blockbusters. I'm joined by Sammy Taormina. Thanks for joining me at the desk again. Owner of the reimagined, the reawakening.
Reimagined!
And he's back asleep at the wheel again. But we'll get into that in a moment. First, let's do a recap of the games from Week 7 in the fantasy football season. Let's go to the My Hollywood Blockbusters against the Team Irish Brogues. I don't think this one, it was close like early on, but
I really didn't. I'm shocked that you would pull off this. I call this an upset.
well, let's look at the studs and duds. I would not have been able to pull off this win if it wasn't for my running back, Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon had a phenomenal game. You can't ask for much more from your running back.
You really can't ask much for what he did.
Two rushing touchdowns, a receiving touchdown.
Receiving touchdown.
Not a ton of yards. He hasn't been, I don't even know if he's had a 100-yard game this season.
I don't think
he has a ton of touchdowns, which is really what you want in fantasy.
In this league, it's huge to have it because touchdowns are very important. But when you look at what Melvin Gordon's done, taking over, assuming that #1 spot with Danny Woodhead out for the year, I think that with what he's brought to that team, I just think at the end of the day, it's his team and it's his job to lose right now.
He's got to be considered for comeback player of the year. He kicked, if you look at his stat line here, 2 touchdowns in week 1.
Right.
And over the course of 7 weeks, 2, 4, 6, 8 touchdowns on the season, man. I'm really, really happy with his results.
It's a good pickup for you. It's good when you drafted him on draft night, of course. I didn't think that. I was interested in Melvin Gordon. I admit I was interested in him, because I knew what he brought. I mean, I have in my other league that I have, of course, my 2 other leagues that I'm doing very well at. But I just think that with him there, it's going to help solidify that San Diego offense going forward, especially because now you don't have to rely on Philip Rivers' arm to carry you. Now you're going to have to rely on
they got to respect the run.
Right.
The dud, there's a couple of duds on my roster, but the one that jumps out at me is Odell Beckham. Last week, he had a monster game, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. They travel to London, which always makes me nervous. And in London, he puts up 4 points.
When you go to London, it's always a problem because, you got to deal with the travel, you got to deal with the time change, you got to deal with all that. And I think that's why I think he struggled against the Rams. And also the Rams have a pretty good defense.
Yeah, I think their defense is underrated. I actually have the Rams defense. I'm in 3 leagues. I have them in all 3 of my leagues, and they've actually been playing pretty well for me. They held Eli, as you can see on my bench, to 9 points, held Beckham to 4 points. So, Now let's go over to the other side, Team Irish Brogues. Not a lot of production on his squad. His leading scorer was DeMarco Murray from the Titans, who lost to the Colts. 107 yards rushing, 1 touchdown. Not a bad performance there.
He's been playing really well the last 3 weeks. I mean, even though he had that 68-yard game against Cleveland, I just think that DeMarco Murray, the way he's been playing, I think he's the key to Tennessee's season. And besides development of Marcus Mariota, I just think that he's the guy that's very critical to how that offense worked. But I look at a guy, who Kevin McCormick traded for, and his name was Todd Gurley from Anthony, of course.
Who did he give up for Gurley?
He gave up Marvin Jones.
Marvin Jones, who's been playing phenomenally for the Lions. I don't know. I mean, it's not a bad trade, but right now the Brogues are on the losing end of that. Gurley only put up 8 points this week. But if I had to pick a dud on his side of the ball, Amari Cooper, who's been playing fairly well for the Raiders, the Raiders put up 33 points in their win over Jacksonville, and Cooper did not.
It's either Cooper or Crabtree that's getting the points because you look at I don't know if they're focused on one or the other. I just think that Jacksonville got to give their defense some credit for shutting Cooper down, but also you got Michael Crabtree there for Oakland, of course, with Derek Carr there.
Crabtree's having a
great season. You know what I mean? To go with Derek Carr, I think that that combination. I think it's going to be a good combination to go to for weeks to come.
Yeah. Looking at his bench, not a lot of point production on the bench. He was hurt by a lot of buys. 3 different players on buys, so I took advantage of him.
He took advantage of him. That's a big win for you. Big win for you. You needed this win.
Let's go to your game, Reawakening versus your brother. King Koloje Ant. Let's take a
Oh,
look.
my
Let's go to
God.
your roster first. Man, we need to point out, we talked about this before the show. You put up the second highest point total of Week 7
I
and
think
lost.
I've seen it somewhere before.
And that's been happening in this league. The second highest point total goes up against the number 1 point total and loses. You got phenomenal production from Andy Dalton. He had a good game.
I picked him up. You know what I mean? I picked up Andy Dalton.
Great matchup against the Browns.
Yeah, put him together with A.J. Green and, you know what I mean? And that was a heck of a combination. I got over 100 points. But, I think that was a good pickup. I dropped Carson Wentz to pick him up.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was in the waiver wire, so I picked him up.
308 yards, 2 touchdowns, 27 points. I mean, a big chunk of that, and of course, one of those touchdowns came on that Hail Mary play to
guess who was A.J. Green?
but
me. So,
you sure benefited from that. Look at that, 22 from Green, 27 from
You know what really bothered me, and I'm going to be honest with you, was that Thursday night game where Brian Hoyer got hurt out for the year. I picked up a guy named Cameron Meredith because he had a great match against Green Bay's pass defense.
And he did well last week, didn't he?
Yeah, he did well last week, and then he only put up 1 point this week. That bothered me. And also Lamar Miller getting hurt, last night. I just think that my running game has not been consistent. It's been a huge problem, and it's been hurting me.
Let's look at Crabtree on the bench. 96 yards receiving and a touchdown. He's been playing fairly well. He had a down week last week, but he had a 3-touchdown game against Baltimore.
Well, here's the thing with Crabtree. I mean, everybody's covering Cooper, but when you look at Crabtree, what he brings a good problem because you can put him in that flex spot or you can even put him as a wide receiver. So I got very much a dilemma next.
Yeah, they're facing Tampa Bay, so you need to debate. But I think he's emerging as a star in this league. I would put him in my starting lineup.
Yeah, I probably would have to put him in my starting lineup, probably either in my flex or maybe make another quarterback switch. I'll probably talk to one of my bosses at work over that.
Now, he has a quarterback dilemma. He has Kirk Cousins, who's been playing well, put up 25 points against the Lions, but sitting on his bench is Andrew
God
Luck.
I didn't have to deal with Andrew Luck because
36
he
points.
scored 36 points. Against Ant. I mean, if he would have put Luck and T.Y. Hilton together, I would have been that 138 could have been much worse. I mean, I'm happy he started Cousins in that game, but Cousins still killed me. I mean, another guy that really killed me was obviously Garrett Blount, and then you have the Ravens defense.
Yeah.
Good God. I could not believe it.
Let's look at Blunt's numbers. 24 points, 127 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns.
Well, how is it going against one of your former team?
Man, yeah.
He used to play at Pittsburgh, you know what I mean? So that was huge for him. That was huge that Blount would go off against a very good Pittsburgh defense. He has 8
touchdowns on the season.
He's got 8 touchdowns in the season, It was a good pickup for Anthony.
C.J. Anderson on Monday night put up 16 points. Both him and Devontae Booker, it seemed like no matter who was in, they were getting yards. They each scored a touchdown.
It's a hit or miss between Anderson and Booker. They're sharing carries. I mean, it's probably best to keep him on your bench right now.
I don't know. I think Denver's on fire right now.
But if he's that desperate, you start him right now. But he's red hot right now. Ant's red hot. Now. He is red hot.
He really is. Let's go to the game between the Thrashers and Witherspoon. Witherspoon came out on top. Thrashers is really struggling. Look at the production Thrashers got from Rodgers. Rodgers had a really slow start to that game against Chicago, and then I don't know what kind of pep talk he got at halftime, but he came out in the second half.
Probably must have did that famous commercial. You know what I mean? Remember that Geico commercial? I think Aaron Rodgers. He's a heck of a player, heck of a quarterback. But I think what helped him was getting he had a big game from I believe Vernon Adams, I believe, or
Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams.
Yeah, Nelson was quiet, which hurt Thrasher,
but then but Rodgers has been playing very, very well lately.
Well, this is his first 300-yard game of the season. He's come close. Last week he had 294.
Yeah, but he's giving you a consistent over 20-point game a night.
Yeah.
So you think about it,
And a couple of multiple touchdown games.
Couple multiple touchdown games,
But unfortunately, look at the rest. Jamal Charles, I just don't think he's ready to be put in your starting lineup yet. He got you to 0.
Spencer Ware is clearly the lead back at Kansas City right now.
Yeah, and he had a nice game.
He had a nice game.
Matt Jones, -1.
2 fumbles.
His fumble negated any yardage that he had collected.
Fumbles.
Brutal. 0 from Jordy Nelson, which you don't expect. A healthy Jordy Nelson.
No.
Woo, rough outing for the Thrashers,
It was a rough outing. You know what I mean? It was a rough outing for Ian Locke, and now he sits at 2-5 right now.
Now, Witherspoon, monster production once again from Drew Brees. Drew Brees is playing like the Drew Brees of old. 367 yards, 3 touchdowns.
He put up 44 against me last week.
7 touchdowns in 2 weeks.
7 touchdowns in 2 weeks.
Holy moly. Almost 1,000.
You know what also helps him? He's got Brandon Cooks on his team because he's been the beneficiary of it all. You know?
Cooks has been their number one. He's really proven
So when
himself.
you really look at it, Ian's got a very deep team. You know, it's not easy. You know what I mean? But look at how many points he left on the bench. He had Jeremy Hill went off for 24 points.
Yeah.
Tavon Austin at 13, and Latavius Murray at 17.
I wish I had those kind of problems.
You know, so that's kind of a good problem for Ian right now. To have.
All right, let's go to our final matchup, undeflated at Atwater. Atwater, after starting the season off slow, has put together a nice 3-game win streak.
I think ever since that loss to me, you know what I mean, he's really started to turn the corner around. I think that it's kind of a horrible loss for Joe Velez because he's lost 2 straight games. But for John Atwater, I think, what benefited him was he finally got some balance. We picked up Jay Adai.
Oh, from Miami,
I think it really benefited him.
Monster
And then, of course, he had a nice game from Randall Cobb in Seattle's defense. I think it was huge for him.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at Joe Velez's production here, it's those first 4 positions, look at that. 24 from Brady, 16 from David Johnson, 15 from Jaquiz Rogers, and 21 from Mike Evans. But you can see the rest of his roster didn't quite produce. So that game could have gone either way. And
it's funny because DeAndre Hopkins is a guy that it was his top pick, and he's struggling. And then you look at how John Atwater's done this. He's had the beneficiary. I'm a little surprised he left Matt Forte on his bench, but
24 points.
Yeah, he's benefited from playing. I think John Atwater's red hot right now because of this. I think this is John Atwater's biggest win right now. Knocking off Joe Velez, who right now leads our division right now by 2 games, but we'll see what happens.
But look at you have to imagine what's going through the undeflated's head as they're watching the Monday night game. You're only down come Monday night. He was only down by take 493.
Yeah.
So he only needed about 9 or 10 points from DeAndre Hopkins, which should have been theoretically possible.
Right.
And Hopkins only produces 3 points. And I don't know if I blame Hopkins. I blame Osweiler. Osweiler's been looking terrible. Houston is a mess. We're going to talk about the possibility Houston's going to be facing the Detroit Lions next week. We're going to talk more about that after the break. This game could have gone either way.
It could have gone either way. By Hopkins. But, a guy that Velez could have started with Jamison Crowder. He had a nice game against the Lions, 18 points. How do you leave 55
Crowder
points off your bench?
Crowder got 10 points against the Lions.
Sorry. How do you leave 55 points on your bench? That's
Demarius Thomas, too, man. That's a stud that was left on the bench.
How do you leave 55 points on your bench? So I think if I'm Joe Velez right now, I pretty much either make a trade or maybe even look at possibly benching some folks.
Yeah, if I got any Broncos, and I do have a Bronco on my roster, I think you start your Broncos. I think they're rolling right now.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so that recaps Week 7 in fantasy football. When we come back after this break, we're going to look ahead to Week 8, try to make some predictions, which we did pretty well last time. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this break.
Hi, Lake Orion. Chief Jerry Narsh, Lake Orion Police. Just a quick conversation with you about a ballot issue coming up in November. You're going to see on the ballot a police millage proposal. And you're going to say, well, wasn't that already on there in August? Well, it kind of was. That's for 1 year. The one you're voting on in November is for the remainder of the years. And the reason it was separated is because the township is no longer collecting the millage. Now the village is. So really, the only thing that's changed is who you pay. The amount is exactly the same as was collected 4 years ago. The millage itself is not increasing. This is not a double dip. It's the same amount, just the difference is who you pay. So I encourage you to get out and vote, and we'll see you soon.
And welcome back to ONTV Fantasy Football League. As we do every week in the second half of the program, we're going to look ahead to Week 8. Some interesting games coming up. We got Jaguars versus the Titans on Thursday night. Who are the Lions playing? They're playing the Texans.
Texans of Houston.
And then the Monday night game, classic rivalry, Eagles versus that's Sunday night
game.
Eagles versus Cowboys.
Monday
and then
night game,
Monday night
Minnesota,
Vikings,
Chicago.
Bears. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the bottom fantasy defenses as of heading into Week 8. Rock bottom is Cleveland.
They are bad.
They're going to be facing a terrible New York Jets team next week.
This is a tough one.
That could be interesting.
That's gonna be funny.
The second to the last worst fantasy defense is Detroit. Despite the fact that Detroit's been kind of hot lately, their defense is still giving up a ton of points. They're facing Houston.
Oh my God.
Ranked 30th is Atlanta, who again has been playing well, but they're facing the Packers in
Aaron
Week 8.
Rodgers.
The Saints are ranked number 29th. They're facing Seattle. And then ranked 28th are the Oakland Raiders versus Tampa Bay. Now, let's go into skill positions. Let's start off with quarterbacks. Ranked dead last against quarterbacks are the Detroit Lions.
You know, this is funny because, Brock Osweiler was horrible against Denver.
He was.
And
But Denver's a tough defense.
Right,
So.
but you look at the Lions, I call them the Hello Kitties. And the reason why I call them that is because they give up a lot of pass yardage, especially I think if I'm starting DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller, this is probably the week you start them.
Yeah, I expect points from those guys. I wouldn't go too crazy and say start Brock Osweiler. I don't think he deserves a starting position on anybody's team.
No.
But
he should be
start
the
the
waiver wire.
receivers.
Yeah, start the receivers.
Start the Houston receivers. They should get some points.
Oh, yes.
Ranked 31st against quarterbacks, the Cleveland Browns are facing a terrible New York Jets team. They replaced Ryan Fitzpatrick with Geno Smith, who then went down hurt, so they had to bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, Fitzpatrick played okay on Sunday when he was given his chance. How are the Jets team going to fare against the Browns?
I think Fitzpatrick's confidence is shot because you look at it here, he was benched. He was benched last week, of course, for Geno Smith. And then, the reason why he's starting is because Geno Smith is out for the year with an injury. So I just think that I don't know how Fitzpatrick's confidence is with the Jets right now. As long as but when you look at the situation there, it's a pretty sticky situation with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now he's taking on Cleveland. Now Cleveland's defense is awful.
It is, but you got two terrible teams, but I really think that Cleveland has more potential than the Jets, and I'm going to pick Cleveland to win that game.
I like Cleveland in this game.
Yeah, and I don't know if I trust any Jets player to start. Yeah.
He really can't.
Yeah. Ranked 30th, surprisingly, Carolina, who traditionally has had a really good defense, they're going to be taking on the Arizona Cardinals. Now, they got Carson Palmer under center, who he's had some concussion issues, but it seems like he's 100%. And against Seattle, he threw for a ton of yards, but he couldn't get it in the end zone. 342
Seattle's
yards.
defense is very tough. Let's not forget that. I mean, Carolina this year's oddly been terrible. And I can't figure out how they're terrible, but
start Palmer.
Yeah, I would
start his wide receivers.
Start Palmer. I would start his wide receivers. I would probably start them with confidence.
Exactly. Ranked 29th against quarterbacks, the Atlanta Falcons. They're going to be taking on Aaron Rodgers. Now, Aaron Rodgers has not been himself the past few weeks, but it looked like he turned things around last week. And as we said earlier, threw 3 touchdowns in the second half and broke 300 yards. If he did that last week, I expect more of the same against Atlanta. And
I start Rodgers.
Shootout.
I start Devontae Adams. I start,
Nelson,
I would start Richard Rodgers if I wanted to. Start him with confidence.
I expect a shootout in that game. That's going to be a fun one to watch.
Yep.
Should be a high-scoring game.
Well, you don't know they're in the Georgia Dome, so that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Ranked 28th against quarterbacks. We're flipping the game around now. The Jets taking on Cleveland. Now, rookie Kevin Hogan got a start this past weekend.
Cleveland, this is where the place of quarterbacks, where quarterbacks die.
Yeah.
because this is their 7th quarterback they started this year.
But get this. Against Cincinnati this past weekend, he only had 100 yards passing, this rookie Kevin Hogan. He had 104 yards rushing, and he had an amazing rushing touchdown. Now, I'm not saying start Kevin Hogan this week, but I think it's going to be fun to see what he can do against that terrible
I'm crazy
Jets team.
here? I'm going to disagree with you on Kevin Hogan. I would start him.
Really?
Because
because
he came out of a good college in Stanford. Of course, he's got an arm to throw. He can run it, you know. What we all don't understand about Kevin Hogan is he's got athleticism. And I think this is a good opponent for Hogan to show who he is, to go off against a Jets defense that is just terrible. They have no Darrelle Revis, you know, so I think it's going to be a big game for Hogan and Cleveland's wide receiver. I'd start Hogan with confidence.
Cool. And another quarterback I predict going to have a big week, Jameis Winston, who had a really impressive game against terrible San Francisco. 3 passing TDs, 269 yards over the weekend. They're going to be facing the 27th ranked Oakland Raiders.
I start him with confidence. Start Winston.
Start his
it's
wide
gonna be
receivers.
A shootout. It's going to be a shootout.
Yep. Let's move on to running backs. San Fran's ranked dead last. They have a bye this weekend. Ranked 31st is Indy. They're going to be facing.
Spencer Ware.
Oh my God, they're facing Kansas City.
Start Spencer Ware.
Spencer
I can't
Ware.
trust him on Charles. I can't trust him.
Yeah, I think Charles. I don't even know if he is worthy of a roster spot right now. Spencer Ware. He only had 77 rush yards last week, but he had 54 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. Start Spencer Ware with confidence.
Yep.
Pittsburgh has a bye. The Saints are taking on Seattle on ranked 29th.
This is going to be a rough game. I think it's going to be an interesting game because Russell Wilson, I don't trust him throwing.
Yeah, but we're talking about running backs here. So
backs.
Christian Michael, who didn't have a very good game against Arizona, only 52 yards rushing. I think he's going to rebound against the Saints.
Yeah,
I think he's
anybody would do well against the Saints.
He's going to break 100 yards and get into the end zone.
Yep.
San Diego ranked 28th against running backs, taking on Denver. I say, we talked about this earlier, start C.J. Anderson, start Devontae Booker.
Yep.
They're splitting carries 50-50. Both of them are producing.
Right.
Against Houston, Anderson had 107 rushing yards and a touchdown. Booker had 83 rushing yards and a touchdown.
Well, this one here, I think you gotta start those two guys because San Diego's run defense, you know, even with the addition of Joey Bosa back, I just think that it's going to be a long day for San Diego, and it's at Denver. You know what I mean? And it's at Mount.
That's going to be another fun one to watch.
Yep.
Ranked 27th against the run, taking on the Green Bay Packers. Now, Green Bay Packers backfield is a mess.
Yep.
We got Don Jackson.
Yep.
Niall Davis, who just got traded
from Kansas City.
Yeah, and then James Starks, who was the number 2 back last season, but now he's ranked 3rd.
Eddie Lacy's hurting?
Eddie Lacy is hurting. So those, looking at the depth chart with the Packers, you got Don Jackson, Niall Davis, and James Starks.
I wouldn't
trust
start
any of them.
I still wouldn't. Don't start any of them.
Yikes.
Don't start any of them.
They're going to have to rely on the pass.
Right, they're going to rely on the pass. What about Ty Montgomery?
I didn't even see him listed on the depth chart. So.
I mean, they consider him a wide receiver, you know what I mean? But he should be technically a running back.
Yeah. All right, and then let's move on to wide receivers with the time we have left. Ranked dead last against wide receivers, Chicago Bears taking on division rival Minnesota Vikings.
Adam Thielen.
In one of my leagues, I picked up Adam Thielen and started him last week. He didn't do much of anything for me last week, but in week 5 against Houston, he had 127 yards receiving and a touchdown. Diggs has really fallen off the radar.
Well,
0
Diggs,
touchdowns
I don't know if Diggs
week
is
2.
hurt or not. You know what I mean?
Don't know what's going on there, but Patterson, who wasn't even listed on the depth chart with the Vikings, he had a receiving touchdown. He's primarily returning kicks.
He's returning kicks.
So I would say this week, start Thielen, start Patterson.
Start Patterson.
Not sure about Diggs.
Is a question mark. Yep.
Yeah. Ranked 31st against wide receivers, Kansas City Chiefs taking on Indianapolis. T.Y. Hilton.
You regret this guy. You bash this guy.
I do. I take it all back. I badmouth T.Y.
You need to owe Anthony an apology.
Well,
You need to owe him an
the
apology.
reason I was down on him is I got burnt by Luck in Hilton a season or two ago, and so I was down on him. But they've kind of turned things around.
Get
And
around there, you know what I mean? I start T.Y.
against
heartbeat.
Tennessee, 133 yards receiving and a touchdown. I think he's going to repeat that this week.
I'd start T.Y. in a heartbeat.
In 5 weeks, the past 5 weeks, he scored 4 touchdowns, and he's had 2 games of 170-plus yards receiving.
That means start me.
Start T.Y.
Starting.
Ranked 30th, Oakland Raiders taking on Tampa Bay. We talked about it earlier. Start Mike Evans.
Yup.
8 catches, 96 yards, 2 touchdowns against San
I think
Francisco.
Silverwise has him.
And he has TDs in every game but one. He didn't get in the end zone in week 4. Mike Evans is like a top 10 wide receiver right
I'd
now.
start him with confidence.
And the Jets, we keep talking about this game, the Jets in Cleveland. Jets are ranked 29th against wide receivers. Terrell Pryor is really shaping up into a fine athlete. He's been throwing the ball. He's catching the ball. He did have a down week last week because he's recovering from a hammy. But I would start Pryor this week.
Start Pryor and start Gary
Barnidge.
Barnidge. You know, he had a nice week last week.
He did. He picks up the slack.
He picked up the slack. It's huge. You know what I mean when you look at it.
Yeah. So and then two teams that have been struggling against wide receivers, LA and Baltimore. They're both on buys this week. So now. I haven't done this yet on the show. I brought this out. You know those? You can go to those websites where you can play fantasy football on a weekly basis, and you try to pick the perfect lineup.
Right.
This is what I'm predicting for the Week 8 perfect lineup, and you could chime in on this. I'm thinking based on the names and numbers that we just threw out. If I was doing the weekly fantasy football thing, I would start either Carson Palmer or Aaron Rodgers. I think either one of those guys is going to have a monster week based on the defenses they're playing.
Yep.
RB1, I would start Spencer Ware.
Agreed.
RB2, I'm thinking either Christian Michael with Seattle or one of the 2 Denver running backs, either C.J. Anderson or Booker.
Yeah, I think it might make some sense. Maybe put C.J. Anderson maybe as a flex play. So we'll see.
Yeah, yep. Wide receiver 1, I think T.Y. Hilton's going to have a monster game. Mike Evans is going to have a monster game in wide receiver 2. So those would be my starting wide receivers. Kicker, I mean, really, you'd have to throw Vinatieri in there every week until he has a bite.
He's accurate. He's the only kicker I can trust that's accurate.
He's been
accurate.
Incredible.
He's accurate.
He might be one of the oldest kickers in the
Very
league.
accurate, though.
Wow, what a season that guy's having. And we don't talk much about kickers on the show, but yeah.
He's very accurate.
Now, defenses. I was looking at the matchups this week, trying to figure out who's going to have the biggest defensive performance in Week 8. The one that really jumped out at me possibly would be Minnesota over Chicago.
Yup.
Chicago's really struggling.
I am firmly starting Minnesota's defense Monday night.
Yeah.
Firmly.
I think they're going to. I mean, do you see any other matchups here that NFL.com has listed that might jump out at you?
When I look at the matchups, I think that I would start. You may think I'm crazy here, but I would start. You got to start Seattle's defense for sure. I would actually
consider. What do you think the Lions are going to do against the Texans? I mean,
that's
we talked
gonna be
about
a shootout.
We said start DeAndre Hopkins, but Osweiler's really been struggling.
I think it's going to be a shootout. I think it's going to be a shootout because I don't trust the Lions defense.
I never trust their defense.
Well, if I had to trust the defense there, it's Houston.
Yeah.
Because it makes a lot of sense to start Houston's defense. I trust them a lot more than I would in the Lions defense.
Now the Broncos have a good defense, but they're facing the Chargers, who've been hot lately.
I would bench them.
I would stay away from that.
Stay away from them. I would say the best ones start defense are Minnesota's defense, and also just maybe Seattle's defense. Because I think even though they're playing the Saints and Drew Brees, I think Seattle will find a way and stop Brees.
Sounds good. Well, hopefully our advice will help you out in Week 8, and we've been pretty accurate the past couple weeks when it comes to our predictions. So good luck in Week 8 in fantasy football. Good luck to you, Sammy. Thanks for joining me again, and we will see you next time on ONTV's Fantasy Football League. I'm Joe Johnson. Good night.